Hello everyone, my name is Jake Liebricks and welcome to Living My Best Life, the podcast. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land that we're recording on today, which is the Whadjuk Noongar Budja, and pay respect to their elders past and present. With me today are two incredible human beings from APM who will really help us understand what partners in community are, what do they do, and how can they help us in the application process. So, hello.
Hi, thanks for having us here, Jake.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So just introduce yourselves, what is your role, and one random fun fact.
My name is Paige Wilson. I'm the team leader for community development and access across WA. One fun fact about me, I'm a massive animal lover. My partner thinks we're growing a farm in our small suburban backyard, chickens, dogs, horses. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And my colleague?
Hi, my name's Kate Malkovich and I'm a Community Development Local Area Coordinator in the North Metro area. One fun fact about me, there's a couple of them I'll just choose. I'm a huge Walking Dead fan and anything in the zombie genre.
Yes, amazing. I've watched the first season. Yeah, I need to get on it more.
It gets better and worse, you know. Yeah. But persevere, yeah.
Could you explain what a local area coordinator is and what their role is in the NDIS application process?
Okay, so a local area coordinator is a person that is, tasked with supporting NDIS participants and people that come into the office with accessing services, the NDIS, linking with community groups in their areas, service providers, I'm a community development local area coordinator, so my role is more sort of strategic and, improving the community's access and inclusion for people with disabilities.
So not just linking in individuals to the NDIS, but kind of improving the community as a whole.
Yes. So whereas we have other local area coordinators that work directly with people that come into the office or participants to support them to achieve their planned goals or access the NDIS. Yeah, and the other part of your question, partners in the community, APM is one. We have 15 offices across Australia, and your local government area is will decide who your partner in the community is. Should you meet access, or you need to go in and ask a question. You don't get to choose if you are a participant, and I think I've given you some links to our partners in the community, the map that's on the NDIS website, and so people can go and have a look and see who the partners are. In West Australia, APM is a partner, Mission Australia and Wansley are the partners in community for children under 7.
Yes, okay. Yeah. And they assist with the early childhood approach?
Yes. Our local area coordinators at APM can help you understand eligibility criteria if you're wanting to try and seek access. Provide you information about what evidence you'll need and how you can best present it with your application. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is the LAC doesn't decide whether you're eligible or not. The decision's made by a person at the NDIA or NDIS who will, a delegate, that's what they're called, and they'll work out in line with the NDIS Act. So there's legislation and that they have to consider in their decisions. So they're the main things that I wanted to highlight.
One of the things we talk about in the training, kind of comparing the NDI and the NDIS, because when we talk of Centrelink, we say we're on the phone to Centrelink or going to see Centrelink, but then with the NDIA, we talk about, we're going to go to see NDIS or talk to the NDIS, when really we're talking to delegates or employees from the NDIA.
Yes, and it can get a little confusing. So
lots of acronyms.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but that's one of the perks of coming and seeing your LAC is that they can speak in everyday language rather than government speak. so we can hopefully simplify the process.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not just what you know, but then who you know. Can assist kind of just break things down in a way easy to understand. You said you assist people, individuals that are both already have access and help them with their goals, but then help people also get access, or at least go through the process. There's no guarantees, but it's just doing the best that we can. How do you assist people specifically with psychosocial disabilities?
Yeah, so anybody can approach the office, depending on, as Kate said, in your local area. You don't get to choose, but depending on your local area, depends on where the partner and community is. So somebody who come into the office and speak with one of our staff and just say that they're looking to apply to the scheme. And from there, they may be able to support them there and then, or it may not be a good time for that person, and we can take time to meet with people by their preferred communication methods. So they can come in, have a face-to-face meeting if that's what the person desires. But it might be you feel more comfortable speaking to somebody over the phone or on Microsoft Teams or via email. We really do work with people to get the best outcome in the communication for themselves, but also for us. We find it really helpful when people are looking to apply to the scheme that they come with somebody like the mental health caseworker if they have one, or they're on the end of the phone and we have a communication with them.
Or maybe something like a CPS worker or something along those lines?
Anybody that has an understanding of your disability and your life, how you function kind of day to day, and what struggles you may have, what things you're really good at, but also what things you need some support with. So taking that time to link in with those other people in your life that know you a lot better than your LAC that has just met you, 15, 20 minutes ago. And we try and build that relationship, but obviously, there's a time frame if you wanted to get your access request in, but also for us to get all that evidence. So working with those other individuals, friends, carers, but also health professionals as well, to take that time to really get the best outcome and understand what's going on for you, and recommend the best pathway, whether that is to look at getting access to the NDIS or whether it's linking you in with some other supports that are available within your local area as well. So once you've had that meeting with an LAC or that initial visit, we can then work with you, and hopefully it will be with the same person, and gather that evidence that's required, and kind of have that open communication, however long it may take.
Yeah, cool. So you assist in that evidence gathering process?
Yeah.
Like to have kind of suggestions of these are the kind of things you need to be looking for, or these are the kind of community support networks or different clinicians you might need to go into, that kind of thing? Yeah,
definitely. So one really helpful tip is that we'd actually recommend that you use the Psychosocial Evidence of Disability form.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Please use that form. It's been specifically tailored for people who have a psychosocial disability, because we acknowledge there are barriers to people, there can be barriers to people accessing the scheme with a psychosocial disability. So it really lays out the land of what information the NDIS need to know about a permanent disability and a significant disability, and how your health professional can best comment on that. Because we need to know that you've engaged in treatment options, and that actually has an effect, your disability has an effect on you, on your day-to-day function. You generally can't do things without the support of another person, or what we call assisted technology, so aids that might help you to be more independent. So that information gathering, using the Psychosocial Evidence of Disability form, liaising with the health professionals to get that evidence. And LAC can't fill in section 2 of that, or the psychosocial disability form. We can't fill that in, that has to be done by a health professional, but we can support you with gathering your personal details, and if you need support, writing that on the form as well. So
And with section 1, you can actually ring up the NDIS and complete section 1.
On the access request form?
Yes, verbally. So that's just another...
calling the NDIS directly to do that is the only way you can do the verbal access requests. And to assist staff within the mental health space to understand what the NDIS require, because there's government systems, apart from the NDIS, like through Centrelink, where somebody might be applying for DSP. That's a completely independent support to the NDIS. So what's required for DSP versus what's required for NDIS, they both have different requirements. So a lot of times we see people who come to us and, here's my DSP report. Well, the definition for DSP for permanent is 2 years and stable, whereas for NDIS, it's likely to be lifelong. So you need different information for the NDIS versus other government systems. So that psychosocial evidence of disability form, we've seen better outcomes, just speaking from experience, when people use that form, and I have provided really in-depth information about the treatments that they've been engaged in, the frequency of how long they've engaged in them, and that outcome of each of them. Because if you can clearly demonstrate that you've been engaged in multiple treatment options that have been recommended to you, and the outcome of each of those, then that's what the NDIS are looking for, that likely to be lifelong.
Yeah, especially with psychosocial kind of evidencing, because the treatment options that can be recommended can be quite lengthy, especially like with PTSD. And so providing evidence that you've at least considered and tried these treatment options and this is the result. When someone hasn't done that, then it can be a bit of a process before even you can apply.
Yeah. And also, if you can't engage in a treatment for whatever reason, then that just needs to be explained to the NDIS, because they're not mind readers. They get this document in front of them. Unfortunately, they're not there to see you in person or have a chat with your health professional. So that one document needs to clearly stand out to that individual that you haven't engaged in this treatment option because of X, Y, Z. You haven't just missed it off. You have engaged, but you couldn't because of a risk or whatever. And so that just needs to be clearly outlined, because a lot of the time people have engaged, but it's getting it written down to show and clearly evidence. That's the hard part, is gathering that information. 100%.
But it provides an opportunity to describe the impact in your daily functioning, and it's quite split out in the domains so that you can describe your functional impacts. And sometimes people don't necessarily have like a diagnosis document, but they will be able to demonstrate the struggles that they face with the Section 2 form. 100%,
because technically you don't need a diagnosis, but you can still provide evidence for the impairments and their impacts of them on your functional impact, which is exactly what you're talking about.
And sometimes people don't have access to all of that information because of various factors, like they might have had that diagnosis years before and it's in storage somewhere, or they don't have all the documents from...
It can be expensive. It can be really expensive.
Wait lists can be long as well. Having a diagnosis doesn't give definitive access to the scheme. There's no List A or List B conditions for a psychosocial disability. And if you're wondering what they are, have a Google on NDIS website. Diagnosis can be helpful, but it's not necessary.
Are there any requirements for someone looking to work with an LAC during the application process?
There's no requirements that a person has to work with an LAC to apply. However, our experience is that it's better to work with an LAC from the outset, so that you have all the information and all the eligibility requirements and evidence, sort of examples explained to you, and you can ask your questions and you can put your best application forward initially, so that we can't say whether or not you are going to get accepted, but you can have a better chance with more relevant and targeted information to support your application.
100%. Is there any wait lists? Can someone just walk in or call up and then go from there?
Yes, yeah, we don't have any wait lists. You can walk into your local office. I mean, you may have to sit and wait for them to photocopy, your application, but generally, you can walk into the office. You can ring up. We have an APM Communities website where you can email. What you can do is you can walk into your office, your local office. You could ring up our APM Communities line.
Cool. Is there any translation or interpreting services which APM uses for people that kind of might need that assistance?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
We have interpreter services for people whose first language isn't English. So it might be best to email us beforehand, and say that you would require a translator for this conversation, and we can schedule in a translator over the phone, or if that person is available speaking that language within WA, we can get them in person in the office as well. We also have you have the National Relay Service, and we have Auslan interpreters as well that we can book, but we do. They generally do have a wait list of around 2 weeks, it wouldn't be feasible to come and walk in on the day and have an Auslan interpreter there in the office. So if you give us prior notice that you require an interpreter, we absolutely have interpreting services available throughout all our offices.
Fantastic. There are two different forms which are core to a psychosocial application, to kind of at least the beginning: the access request form and the evidence for psychosocial disability form. Can you help and fill those out?
Yes, an LAC can support with filling out section 1. An LAC could support you to phone up.
For the access request?
The verbal access request for section 1, but you would call the NDIS 1800 number. It's personal details like filling out name, address, date of birth. The LAC can most definitely help you with that. Section 2, it's got to be completed by the most relevant sort of treating health professional. So for some people that might look like their psychologist.
So for part 1 of the psychosocial disability form, it has to be a psychiatrist, a GP, or a regional area has to be a psychologist. And it says on the form, or most relevant clinician, or something along those lines. We called to find out what that definition is, and they did not give us an answer. So I'm assuming it is just the GP, psychiatrist, and then psychologist and regional. For the first part.
GP, as well. But I thought you used another, when we were sort of talking about the mental health care caseworker. That's okay, that's right. Was there an acronym that no, it's just your mental health caseworker.
Well, the mental health caseworker can't fill out section 2 because they don't have
they can provide information on your day-to-day functioning. So they're able to support you with that information, but it's a psychologist, psychiatrist, or GP that fills out section 2 with the sort of medical diagnosis information.
Permanency.
Yes.
Maybe we could do that bit again.
Because you used a different. Anyway, it's okay.
I'll say it again at some point, and you'll be like, "That's it."
Yeah. No, when you were talking to Paige before, and I was like, I wanted to know if it was like another acronym for mental health caseworker, but
I can't remember. When I'm editing it, it'll click.
Yeah. And you go, no, but that was that. And she's like getting it all wrong because it was for something different.
So you've said before that you can assist in someone filling out the first part of the access request form.
Yes.
What about the other ones?
The second part, or the evidence of a psychosocial disability form, I'm getting my tongue all tied here, must be completed by sort of the most relevant treating health professional. This could be your psychologist, psychiatrist, or your GP. And you can also be able to provide some information for your on your daily functioning, but like your mental health caseworker can help you with that. And this will help sort of address this sort of significant part of the NDIS criteria. So any sort of supporting evidence you can provide in that form from the people that are, know you and know what impacts your disability has on your daily functioning is helpful.
Yeah, because people's functioning does fluctuate. And also, if I'm going into a new place, I'm going to try to be my best self. And so that's for everyone. And so how someone might approach and kind of communicate the first time around might be different to their usual day-to-day function. So having someone there to kind of support and say, hey, this is the full picture for the people we're supporting is really, really important. That's good advice. Okay. Could you explain what a permanent disability is? Because you've mentioned that it's most likely to be lifelong. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so for the NDIS, the definition of permanent is that all likely treatment options have been explored and that the disability is likely to be lifelong. And how you would evidence that for the NDIS is demonstrating that you've engaged in all the recommended treatment options available to you. So that might look like recommendations from your treating health professionals. I'm not a treating health professional, so I'm not going to make those recommendations, but have a conversation with them around what recommendations they've made. And for each of the recommendations they've made, you would need to comment, or the health professional would need to comment on what was the treatment option, how long you engaged in that treatment option, and the outcome of each treatment option. And that really would demonstrate to the NDIS if you've engaged in all the likely treatment options available to you and there's nothing else further available within Australia as a recommended treatment option for someone experiencing your diagnosis of psychosocial disability, or if you don't have a diagnosis, the recommended or available treatment options for that specific condition that you have, or what they think that you might have, then that's really tying the knots around the application that you've engaged in X, Y, and Z, and that there's nothing further likely available to you, and therefore it is likely to be permanent for you, and you do require supports to support your daily functioning.
Yeah, and also the case when someone does have some treatment options they've tried and it's worked, but then over time there's a resistance built up because, okay, this got me back to 80% functioning, but now I'm only at 50 because I've been using it so much, so it's no longer an option. And having all of that evidence, it's covering your bases.
Yeah, and you can still be engaged in those treatment options, but your function day to day is still significantly reduced and you require support. So you don't need to drop all of those engaged treatment options. You just need to demonstrate that you are engaged in them, but you're not functioning day to day as somebody would who doesn't have a psychosocial disability.
Yeah, 100%. Because the goal at the end of the day isn't necessarily to get NDIS funding, it's to get that functional capacity built up. It's able to engage and live a fulfilling life. So whether it's treatment that is tried and that works, fantastic. If it's the NDIS funding, fantastic. If there's another community support option, or maybe something targeting kind of that first level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the NDIS isn't there to fix everything. It's to kind of assist build people's capacity where they're able to.
Definitely.
Yeah, and everything always works better, when lots of different, community organisations, the support comes from lots of different areas and lots of different bases. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about permanency with a disability. What about the significance?
Yeah, so significance really for the NDIS is how you function day to day, and the requirement is that you generally need the support of another person or assisted technology. So that's aids that support you to be more independent. So it might look like for a person with a vision impairment, a guide dog. It might look like somebody who is unable to express their wants and needs verbally, a communication device. That's what we mean by assisted technology. And within the Section 2 of the Access Request Form, as well as the Psychosocial Evidence of Disability Form, there's 6 domains which a health professional can comment on to demonstrate your significant functional impairment. And
so they're communication, mobility, learning, self-management, self-care, social interaction? Yes. So we did an episode on the 6 domains and we could not remember them all off the top of our heads. But now we can.
Well done. Yes.
And so you previously explained what each of those means, so people can go look at the podcast for that.
But we can then segue to definitely would recommend watching previous episodes because they're pretty cool. And I'm in the previous ones as well, so it can't be too bad.
I don't want to kill your style and what you've already explained, but it is really important to understand the 6 domains because you don't have to demonstrate a significantly reduced functional capacity in all of the domains to meet access to the NDIS. You only need to demonstrate the 1 out of 6 with a significant impairment.
I think it can be rough when you have to kind of talk about and provide evidence for things that you can't do, especially when we have that recovery framework of our strengths and managing our barriers, but focusing on what we can do. So talking about what we can't do can be really rough.
Yeah. Unfortunately, without demonstrating that, you can't get across, what you really need support with. And if you do meet access to the NDIS, the planners will talk about, what are the strengths in your life? What do you want to achieve? What goals do you want to set yourself? But do acknowledge at access it can be quite a negative, to talk about things you can't do, and sometimes realising, I actually do need support to do that. Yeah.
But it sounds like APM is really well equipped to kind of support you throughout that process.
We like to think so, yeah. We do have trained LACs who can support people with the process, and each person's journey is going to be very different to another person's journey. One person's might take a couple of days, another person's can take 6 months to gather the evidence, and another person we might have an open conversation with them. It's like, hey, NDIS might not be appropriate for you at this stage because you haven't explored all those treatment options. We need to have that robust conversation with people about the likelihood of them meeting access to the NDIS. We never say don't apply, but we can give you a realistic have a conversation about the likelihood, and this is the NDIS criteria. At this stage, do you feel that you meet it? Or possibly not. Let's see what else is out there in the community for you as well.
Or if something is, say, from a health condition which the NDIS doesn't fund, and having that conversation around it, because there might be other solutions out there, just not the NDIS. But it's really good to know people can come in and have that honest conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note that sometimes people have lots of things going on for them in their life. They may have disabilities, they may have health conditions, and when you're applying for the NDIS, each disability is considered on its own merit. So if you're applying for a psychosocial disability, but you're also applying for a vision impairment as well, then you need to comment on how each of those are permanent and significant on their own merit. Yeah.
Because then if you start linking them for whatever reason, then the NDIA might question, well, is it really permanent if they're linked? Or if they provide funding for one, will that help solve both? And so it's just kind of, yes, but all of these impairments actually do need some assistance.
Yeah, so each impairment that you have, you need to kind of complete their own access request for each
in a way,
of them, in a way, and really think about them. Although they may have intertwined, the agency wants to know separated what each disability has an impact on day to day and the permanency of each disability. We see that a lot. People applying for write multiple things on their access request form when actually it's likely that only one of them might be funded by the NDIS and others are health conditions, but people might not understand that until they have a discussion with their LAC. So come in and chat with us to start off with.
Fantastic. And with things like anxiety and depression, like they exist, but in order to prove you need NDIS funding for it, it needs to be on that very severe side of things.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is people who generally need support day to day.
Do you have any general advice to people going through the application process?
Well, I would say basically try and make your first application sort of your best application, and that would be by sort of seeking advice from an LAC in regards to the evidence that you have to support your application, and what we've just discussed, whether or not you need to provide other evidence if you have any other disabilities that you're trying to seek access for, and to make sure that evidence is recent. That helps. To make you making your putting all your effort into your first application will save you time down the track.
It's good to know for the listeners at home that regardless of where they're at, they can come to APM for help.
Yes.
So thank you both. It's been a pleasure to be able to talk to you, and I'm sure everyone at home feels the same. And now we know if we have any issues, go to your partner and community. And I believe this is the last episode that we have for this season. There may be another one coming up, who knows? But thank you all for listening. It's been a great journey and can't wait to see you with what happens next. Thanks.